75 minutes. Perfect. Nice. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Feel free to sit in the front here. There's still a couple of seats left. So, welcome to CEPS and good afternoon. My name is Sophia Russak, and this is the third event that we're doing on the European Parliament elections. And in our previous two events, we looked at the far right, we looked at the internal decision-making dynamics of the parliament, at the lead candidates and their campaigns, Qatargate, and what happened or did not happen as a consequence. And if you're interested in those debates, then you can still watch them on YouTube and on our event page, CEPS event page. Today we will also be focusing on the parliament elections, of course, but our focus will be how do member states and citizens look at those elections. We did a little project with 12 think tanks from 12 different EU capitals, where we looked at how European are these election campaigns. And I mean, you know, traditionally we speak about the European Parliament elections being of second order, right? Because they're political parties, national political parties, but also citizens, they find them less relevant as opposed to national elections, and that often results in a lower turnout, and that also results in different voter behavior. People for European elections, they tend to vote, as we say, with the boot, so out of protest, as opposed to vote with the head strategically or with the heart ideologically. So now, arguably, the problems and also the solutions that the EU is facing at the moment is getting increasingly transnational, right? And EU action is also becoming more and more politicized on national level. So this is why we asked with these 12 think tanks, we asked, okay, but you know, did it impact in any way the campaigns? Are they more European than they used to be in the past? So this is one aspect that I would like to talk about today. And the second one is turnout. Last time we saw plus 8%, which was quite a big step. And Eurobarometer data suggests that we might even see a higher turnout this time around. So we want to know why. And then lastly, we're also going to look at the European Parliament's own campaign and ask how effective is this. And for this, we have a wonderful panel here. We have Ilke Teugur. She's the director of the Global Policy Center in Madrid. We have Hector Sanchez Margalev. He is researcher at CDOP in Barcelona. And we have Philipp Schulmeister. He is the director for campaigns in the European Parliament. All right. All right. I would like to bring in your questions throughout the event. So not all in the end. So don't be surprised if I open up the floor very soon, and be prepared. Maybe two more words on the publications. So we have, yeah, exactly, if you can hold this. So this is the publication I'm referring to. This is the report of the 12, with the 12 country reports from 12 think tanks, where we asked, again, how the campaigns look like, but we also asked our authors to tell us a little bit more about what is the current political situation in your member state? How does the current government look at the EU? What results do we expect from the election, and what could be the effects? And then we have, where is the CDOP publication? This is basically, yes, exactly. So this is the same thing. You will also find the country reports in here, but you find in addition wonderful papers written by CDOP researchers on horizontal topics, all election related. All right. That's all from me for now. Ilke, would you like to tell us a little bit about what we have found out, like in these 12 EU member states, from the north, from the south, from the east to the west? Is there any kind of general conclusions that we can draw as regards the Europeanness of the EP election campaigns?
Thank you very much, Sophia. Thank you. If we were in Spain, this would have been...
Take the microphone?
Ooh. My microphone? Yes. Thank you, Sophia. And hello all. And I wanted to say that if we were in Spain, this would have been good morning all, because it's still 12. I want to underline that. It's a pleasure to be here, and it has been a real pleasure to work with you and Hector in these publications. Actually, what we have found, if I want to start with the Europeanness of the elections, is that there is a disconnect between the increasingly European nature of decisions and important issues and themes at the European scene, and increasingly national, or as always, national character of campaigns and national political parties and their candidates. I think what we have seen in most of these countries is that there are the issues on citizens' minds are generally different than politicians' agendas. And the nature of the issues that we discuss, I don't want to get into the issues so much because I know we're going to talk about that, but be it migration, be it the war in Ukraine, be it all the economic issues related to cost of living crisis, poverty, inequality, be it the green transition, which is both has a dimension on the fight against climate change, but also a very, very important dimension on the economic side of things, are very visible, and they are mostly European, but the national parties do not necessarily campaign on them on the European level. So our conclusion is that this second order elections is my PhD. I worked with Hermann Schmidt, who has been one of the first scholars saying this. And I really wonder what we will have with the 2024 data. But the issue is, since, and this is Sophia's expertise, so I'm not going to get into that much, that we are not taking these institutional steps to Europeanize these elections, even if more and more issues are European.
Feel free to also send people in the front here. We still have some. Are people sitting here, by the way, or is it your?
No, this is us.
This is us yourself. Okay, good. No, I was just wondering, where are they? Okay, and how about, Ilke, if we look at election material, election posters, you know, like this stuff, I mean, a few people also read manifestos, but I think most people don't. So the only thing that they see really when it's election time are posters, right? So what do we see across the EU?
Yeah, this is a very good point, and we have asked these 12 country reporters, let's put it that way, country scholars that are from our countries, that like there are so few cases where they use really the logo of the Euro parties that they belong to, that the so few material reflects a connection between the national parties and the groups at the European level, and they don't necessarily connect even the issues at the EU's competence, like the economic issues, single market related issues, or for example, common decisions on migration, etc., etc. They don't necessarily connect to their European counterparts. And we are seeing this even in countries where there is a transnational character, for example, because of the Spitzenkandidaten, it's like Germany, and the case of the European People's Party, CDU in that case, in Germany. Even in those cases, we see in some posters a connection to European party groups, but a really, really few media coverage when it comes to the European nature of things. One thing I could underline here is that actually countries are more interested in covering who might go to Brussels to what we call top jobs. You know, it's like after the elections, for example, we might see some blurbing in member states, especially in big member states like Spain, for example, that like who might be someone important in Brussels. But we don't see in the campaign period, in the pre-electoral period, where they connect. You know, it's like these people are doing this at the national level. They will go and sit in these political groups, and this is how they will be important. And one last remark before you cut me off is that, for example, right now, Spanish Socialist Party, PSOE, is the biggest group in socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. I really wonder if we could ask the Spaniards how many of Spanish citizens would know Spain has the largest delegation in S&D in the European Parliament. I really wonder that, because even leading the group, even playing this leadership role, they don't necessarily connect their national political party to the party group, but rather campaign on individuals, like important figures from the party, and build up the campaigns on these individuals on national issues. So this is a super interesting case indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can contribute that in Germany, if you look at the billboards, you have only now von der Leyen, by the way, very late, and she's together to be seen with Friedrich Merz, who is the leader of the Conservative Party in Germany. And on the socialist side, you have Katharina Barley, so the socialist lead candidate, together with the chancellor. well, neither the Chancellor nor the Friedrich Merz are running for the European Parliament, right? So there's a strong connection always to be seen to the national level. But you mentioned the lead candidates. How present are von der Leyen, Schmidt, the three liberals, and so on in their home countries?
In their home countries. Well, even in their home countries, I think there's slightly bit more visible than they would have been in other countries, but not necessarily much. As you have said, for example, I think the German-speaking member states are the best examples. No? It's like the most of the candidates are from these countries, and I would claim that even in those cases, they are not that visible. But in other countries, in other member states, I think that the lead candidate conversation is not necessarily taking place. What is interesting in Spanish case, the case I know the most, for example, is that von der Leyen already visited, Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission's president, already visited Spain and already gave photo ops with the Partido Popular, which is the part of the European People's Party here. And even there, the conversation was on national issues. I'm sure Hector will comment on this more and more, but even in this specific case, when a Spitzenkandidatin travels to a country, which is a very big member state, and does campaigning, they don't necessarily open up the conversation, at least at the mainstream media level and at the press conferences, etc., to that European issues. The only thing that they underline is that Spain matters.
Hector, that is a perfect moment for you to step in. You wrote the Spanish chapter. Tell us a little bit. Let's zoom into Spain for a moment.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. First of all, thanks for the invitation. It's been a pleasure to collaborate with you on this. I agree with Ilke, basically. Von der Leyen was last week in Spain, and it is true that the meeting that happened, I don't remember exactly where, but the leader of the Popular Party spoke specifically and only on national issues, but he was unable to make Ursula von der Leyen comment on Spanish national issues. So she focused basically on the European debates, although it is true that the campaign remains basically national. It is also true that this is changing slowly. This campaign in Spain, or at least that's what the data shows, finds Spaniards more interested in international affairs than ever they've been. So they, even if the Spanish public opinion may not know everything that's at stake at the European elections, they do know that they are important. And this is a change from the last European elections in 2019, which also, one of the reasons why the turnout increased, but we are going to talk about this later, was that national elections were the same day as the European elections. And then the case of the socialist, Schmidt also visited Spain 2 weeks ago, I think. He was in Catalonia, my land. But again, it was exactly the same. He's less known than Ursula von der Leyen for sure, in Spain as well, obviously. And he also focused on European issues, while the candidates he was accompanying were focusing on national issues.
Would you say there's any impact on Spain after the elections from the election result? Is there any kind of back channeling?
I mean, you mean if the European election result is going to impact the Spanish political landscape? A little bit maybe, depending on the results, but currently the polls show that both parties are more or less there. There's not too much distance between the two main parties, the Socialist Party and the Popular Party, although the winner is supposed to be, or the one coming in the first place is supposed to be the Popular Party. It may have an impact on the left of the Socialist, where there are two main parties competing, Podemos and Sumar. Both Sumar can be considered a split of Podemos. Depending of who gets a better result, this might impact on the government coalition in Spain, but it's very difficult to see that the government can be taken down by the results.
Thanks. Philip, you're from Austria. Would you like to share a little bit how, I mean, you live here, but I assume that you're following the debate in your home country also closely. How are things there?
I'm trying not to follow the debate in my home country too closely because I try not to get too depressed. And just give you an example. I do agree, and for me it's a little bit tricky. We have to differentiate, I think, very clearly what parties, national parties are doing, how governments are communicating, how parties are communicating, how citizens see, and this is not for all parties the same. I think as counterintuitive as this might sound, I think Eurosceptical parties are arguing much more on a European level, partly than government parties do, and this has an impact and will have an impact on election night itself. I think there is a opening and very dangerous gap between the way, on a national basis, specifically in this election, Europe is communicated or not, in comparison to what citizens would expect and how they see the impact of Europe on their daily lives. When you ask about Austria, one of the things that in the last days annoyed me profoundly was one ad that was put by the lead candidate of the EPP party, Österreichische Volkspartei, ÖVP, where the ad literally said we have to vote for the ÖVP in order to break the left majority in the European Parliament. Now I'm working in the Parliament since I think 98, something like that, started 96, haven't ever seen a structural majority against the EPP in this House since then. So I wonder what the story behind this ad is, but it shows me also the disconnect, or the attempted disconnect, in national political communication for these elections with what is really happening, and also to a certain degree with what citizens expect, or how they feel. I'll give you one example. I mean, I'm more of a glasses half full guy. And I think we should not underestimate, in any case, we should get rid of this story European elections are not interesting to people, because they increasingly are. The increase in turnout 2019 was not a one-off. This was not a freak event where we really don't know exactly what happened, just because from 79 to 2014 turnout was dropping every single time. I truly believe that since the economic and financial crisis 2010, 2011, the understanding, the feeling, not the knowledge, the understanding and the feeling of citizens that Europe has an impact on my life, what happens here impacts on my life, has grown. Grown to a degree that this already had the first massive impact with the turnout in 2019. We come to that a little bit later, but I truly believe this is a continuing story that we are going to see here. And what worries me is that actually constructive pro-European political forces in many member states that would afterwards form the constructive pro-European majority in the European Parliament do not keep up with this changing narrative and feeling. They still treat it as a national issue, whereas anti-European, Eurosceptical, critical parties more and more play the European card. We need to change something in Europe, and this is where we need to go together. So this whole narrative of the ID group, partly the ECR group, we can, we will, we have to become the strongest force in the European Parliament, is completely on the other side. And what you, Hector, just said before about PSOE, they could, yes, and should actually said, we are the largest and most influential part of Spain in the European Parliament. They don't.
And
Can I add
yeah,
something very quickly? What Philip was saying about the radical right, highlighting the transnational dimension of the campaign. Actually, what we found out in the report was, for instance, in the Czech Republic, one of the parties that is part of Identity and Democracy, in the billboards, it's showcasing the other parties that are like them, like Le Pen, Salvini's, all that. And it's true that the mainstream parties have given up highlighting the transnational dimension, and that's definitely on them.
But why? Why have they given up? Like, why don't they make a bigger effort in Ilka, please.
Yeah, I also want to pick up a point that that Philip is commenting right now, is that actually I think it's also, you know, in your paper with Nikolai, use this negative Euro branding concept. You know, so it's like they use the transnational character of these issues, but in a negative way. They portray themselves as the savers from these policies to be dictated and at the European level, especially in green transition. I personally think like anti-green transition, anti-climate change policies will be kind of very dominating and negative Euro branding issues on that. But what I wanted to actually say at this point in time is that pro-European integration or more mainstream or super grand coalition parties are not upping their games because they think they are still playing the same game. On the other hand, extreme right-wing parties are changing their structures because after Brexit, they understood that this exiting the European Union is definitely super dangerous and counter-influential for them. So they are now, and I see this in the United States as well, I work on transatlantic affairs as well, they are like creating this impact around the new right. You know, it's like the new right, giving national sovereignty to the nations and kind of keeping and saving the citizens against European policies. So this is why they are using the transnational character of these policies more, because they want to campaign against this and for national sovereignty.
I would like to check if any of you at this point already has a question. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Sara Koho. I'm a journalist for a Finnish newspaper here in Brussels. And I found what you said about the national characteristics of the campaign very interesting, because that's not what I've seen back home in Finland. I think the debate has been very European. It has been focusing on the help for Ukraine, enlargement, immigration, climate change, and also the issuance of common debt, joint debt. But at the same time, the turnout for the elections seems to be horrible. It's very low. The voting has already started, and it seems like it's going to be as low as ever, like 40%. So what I'm 40%, it was 41 in the previous elections. And Finland is pro-European. So I'm saying that the themes in the debate are European, but it will not show up in the turnout. So what I'm thinking, actually, would it be wise to focus on the national issues? Would that lead to a better turnout? So I'm sort of reversing your idea there. That does more Europe actually lead to a better quality in voting?
I'm looking at Philip because he is spending day and night on this, but I'm happy to add on that.
Well, we should also mention that you've been responsible for the Eurobarometer for a very long
Yes.
time, right? So you do know what a little bit about what's going on in citizens' minds.
I think in the long run, medium term, long run, it would be wrong to focus on national events. It is also on national topics. Yes, from first preliminary early voting data, Finland seems to be more or less on the same level as we had in 2019. But again, it's early days. And for turnout, I am sure we will speak later on. But I really truly believe in that. Can just reiterate this point again. Everything that the past years, everything that the Eurobarometer data only to look at this one has shown us over the past 5 to 10 years is this growing feeling, and this is exactly a very, very crucial point. It's not knowledge. There is this growing feeling that European decisions have an impact on my life. Crises driven over the past years, whether it has been Brexit and the perceived consequences for the UK, whether it had, starting with the migration crisis, Brexit, transatlantic relations for sure also, but then specifically Corona and the response of the European Union, war against Ukraine, cost of living, inflation. All these points had a profound direct impact on people's lives, and it's seen as such. And this debate needs to be had, and I find it a major problem, risk, if national political parties shy away from the European dimension of this debate and trying to nationalize it, because the feeling is already there. People do feel. They might not know how the sausage is being made, but they do understand that they will have to eat that sausage rather sooner than later.
Sophia,
You can take
Maybe-
veggie burger if
Would
you
you
want
like to
as a
add
replacement.
one sentence?
just like one dimension on the mainstream political parties. I think what is happening here and why they are not upping their game on Europe is for a particular reason. There is a discontent among citizens. No, it's like we see this. There's a discontent, cost of living crisis, housing crisis in European capitals. This strong feeling about that younger generations are living worse than their parents did, and during while this was happening, in most of the member states, mainstream parties were governing, and they were governing and taking the best out of their governance and shifting the blame to Europe on the things that didn't matter. So they used, actually, even if they were part of these decision-making processes in the European Parliament, in the European Council, in Council, doing policies and decisions and legislation, everything, no? They were at the national level, they were still using blame shifting. And now it's very complicated for them to blame shifting and at the same time share the responsibility at the national level and the European level. This is why I think, for example, personally, why mainstream parties are not upping their game, do positive Europe branding, saying like, okay, this is us. We decided this together in the Council, in the European Council, in the Parliament.
You build a, you want to, no, please add one sentence.
Oh, it's difficult in one sentence, so I'll...
Two, you get two.
Okay. No, also, pre-financial crisis, every critique directed to the European Union was labeled as Euroscepticism. So it was very difficult for mainstream parties to sell alternative visions of Europe without being accused of Euroscepticism. So this gave the floor to radical right parties that are now surging in the polls.
Very good two sentences. And you build a wonderful bridge to turnout, which I wanted to talk about indeed, and I'm going to give you a few numbers. In 1979, we had a turnout of 67% in the EU overall, and since then, and that is no news for you, but it's nice to be reminded, it has been in steady decline up until 2019. So there was not a single European elections between 79 and 2014 where the decline was even only stopped. But then, and this, you know, on this backdrop, the plus 8% are quite significant, right? In total, of course, it's what, 50.7. It's on average still a bit poor, but again, plus 8. Now, we have a great range. Belgium, front runner with 89. Okay, they also have, here's also voting compulsory, right? That plays into it. But I mean, Scandinavia, Germany, Italy, we see quite high rates. And then on the lower end, we have Portugal and most of the Central and Eastern European countries. Slovenia, 23. Why is there such a wide range? Anybody dares to speculate?
I mean, at least in Portugal, what we know is that even national elections, they have low turnout. So this, I think, it has to do with dissatisfaction with how politics work in general. That for sure in Portugal. Then there's also been, I mean, every time there's European elections, we hear that these elections are historical. And then voting is so important because it's going to change our life forever. So this has been repeated every time. So it has lost its impact, although it is true that these elections may be historical this time.
But we have to keep on saying this, right? So turnout, before we talk about why turnout went up, while turnout went down in the last decades, Eurobarometer showed that, you know, the average satisfaction with the EU was going up. How does this go together?
Because the important, significant, the role of the European Parliament was far too little communicated. You said secondary elections. I mean, this is a well-known topos. Of course, European elections are secondary elections. It absolutely doesn't matter whether I vote or not. It actually also doesn't matter whom I'm going to vote for, which in turn led quite more often than not to results that are, if you want, a red flag to the current government, or a pat on the back for the opposition parties, or just basically making some noise without the fear of any consequence to that. And I think we are, again, repeating myself, since 2014 up to the 2019 elections, we're slowly moving out of that area into, and I'm not saying that still to this day, and now the next weekend also, it will be 27 elections, and we will aggregate 27 individual results on election night. This is clear. There will be 50 to 60%, some countries more, some countries less, national topics, but I think it's slowly changing. And we see this, we saw this with the turnout increase. 2019 was uniform more or less across all 28 countries at that point in time. With the Eurobarometer data that we are having now until the last one, March, April, we would see an increasing interest, an increasing awareness, and potentially also an increasing turnout. I don't think we will see that in all countries. I don't think we will see a similar turnout increase by 8 points as we had in 2019, but I'm quite still hopeful that we will see a further increase.
And that is based on the data. So you guys, you asked people 5 years ago whether they intend to vote, and then it was about 60%. And you did the same, you asked the same question now, and it was 71,
Yes.
right? So based on this data, people assume that the turnout might go higher because 11% more compared to a point in time exactly 5 years ago indicated that they're interested to vote. Okay, you alluded to it already a little bit. What do you guys think? Why is that? I mean, even if, let's say, it wouldn't further increase, but would be similarly high, like what changed in this and then election before?
I mean, considering that these elections are historical, it is true that this time more than ever we can assess what the European Union has done in the. Sorry. So I was saying that this time more than ever we can assess what the European Union has done for us in the last 5 years. So if we consider Brexit, if we consider how the vaccination campaign worked in Europe, which was amazing, that all Europeans could get vaccinated at the same time without any discrimination per country. If we can assess how the post-pandemic generation funds when worked out, the response to the Ukraine crisis, all this is very visible. It has been more visible than these topics are more visible than any previous topics in the last 5 years. So this may help increase the turnout because citizens are more aware that the European Union matters, and they can really assess whether they are in agreement of what has been done in the last 5 years.
Yeah, actually, for me, we should separate between the countries where turnout is traditional law. It is law in national elections and European Parliament elections. And there, of course, we can explain with democratic culture. Generally, this happens in new democracies or the countries that transitioned, etc. But for me, the most interesting case is that when people vote in regional elections, national elections, but not vote in European Parliament elections. And if I can add an anecdote here, I was having lunch with the parents from the class of my daughter last weekend, and I was like doing my usual use your vote in the European Parliament elections bit I always do. I'm the annoying person telling everyone to vote all the time. And then I was like, yeah, you guys are voting, no? And then they were like, yeah, meh. And I'm like, why? And then they were like, and I was following up, are you voting in national elections? Because if your answer is no, I feel that this is more of a lost case, that I should go to democracy, citizenship, the right, I don't know. But if they say yes to national elections, and in Spain, yes to regional elections, and no to European, then we have, going back to this conversation about that people have path dependency on European Parliament elections do not matter. And this is the point where we really need to work on. And the European Parliament, I'm not saying because Philip is here and Zoom is a good friend, it has been doing its job in explaining people why they should go and vote. But if I may add, I think we really need even more targeted campaign. If the European Parliament elections are 27 different campaigns, we need more targeted campaign at the national level, explaining these people that vote in the national context, but they still think that the European Parliament elections do not matter. And it should go beyond the half of the legislation in Spain comes from Brussels kind of campaigning, because they have their national representatives to discuss about that. I think we should really go more to the core of, okay, we're in a period of change in the world, and this is economic, green tech, demographic. We have so many issues. I don't want to get into the issues block once again, but this is why Europe matters, and this is how we can really impact from the school education and going to the adult life, explaining why Europe matters and why the people should exercise their right to vote.
But the issues that are in people's minds, are these the big ticket issues that we're dealing here with? I mean, is there an overlap, you know? Because it is obvious that the EU has a massive impact on people's life, and that we're dealing with indeed big ticket items, and the EU is not a technocratic polity anymore, right? But are these the topics that people on member states across these 27 countries actually care about?
Yeah, I think if this question is for me, I wanted to say one thing. Because, for example, again, I want to give an example from Spain. Spain, when you look at Eurobarometer, the most important issues are related to cost of living crisis, poverty, social exclusion. But for example, when you come to Brussels and Brussels ecosystem, not that I'm saying the institutions are not doing their bit on every piece of legislation, because that's something different. The conversation goes very much around, it's like Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the great power rivalry between the United States and China, economic security, competitiveness, etc., etc., etc. You go to like an ordinary citizen in Spain, and you talk about great power rivalry and how the European Union should game up. This is a non-issue.
Yeah, competitiveness is not a term relevant for ordinary citizens, right? It's
Or
purchasing
economic
power
security.
and yes.
It's like you just need to go and campaign about how olive oil, which is essential in the Spanish like culture and kitchen, is way too more expensive. This is the issue.
Any more opinions on that?
You're right. You're right that bubble thinking and bubble topics are something quite often very different from what people at home might feel, might worry about, might need. On the one hand, on the other hand, I really have to resist this idea that it is only, and I know you didn't say only, the European Parliament who has to do more in terms of targeted campaigns in the member states. I mean, when we start the debate with national parties in the election campaign, governments are talking about whatever they want. They're shying away from taking the responsibility, which, by the way, in my view, is quite a learned thing over the past 20, 30 years. An intergovernmental system, which basically means I can decide something mostly behind closed doors, on the Brussels level, which helps me not needing to talk about that and having the easy way out of saying this decision was taken by Brussels. This has actually nothing to do with me or with myself. In Austria, we had for years and years this funny idea that there should be some kind of a virus in Austrian Airlines planes because every time ministers are coming back from Brussels to Vienna, they seem to have completely forgotten about what they did in the last council meeting. And it is something that persists very much to this day. So there really necessarily needs to be a change in the way how all of us, all actors, national actors included, communicate about Europe, because otherwise, and this now briefly to the turnout, I mean, let's not equate an increase in turnout with more pro-Europeans going to vote. This is simply not true. I mean, you said one of your three sets of the discussions that you had was about the rise of the far right. Yeah, Jesus Christ, why are these people going more and increasingly more to European elections? Because they can pick up on things that people care about. And they talk about whether it's right or wrong what they say, whether this is disinformation or not, doesn't matter. People care about that. And we partly are stuck with bubble speech on the one hand, or we discuss national topics. And this is not what is happening on the other side. So if there is an increase, and you all know it from looking at the polls, I mean, we will see a further increase in Eurosceptical parties in this parliament now. Might go up to 28, 29, 30% of the overall vote or seat share in the House.
It's a very pessimistic calculation, though. Let's hope it's not going to be that bad. Yeah.
Let's stick to 25 for now.
Okay, but what are the topics then of the far right? I mean, okay, when it comes to turnout, we see that they mobilize non-voters, right? So an increase in turnout is also related to an increase in far right supporters. But when it comes to topics, what kind of topics, issues, policies, I mean, apart from the obvious migration one, what are they capitalizing on?
And I think these topics are transnational. I mean, for the radical right. I mean, migration is one. It's pretty obvious. National sovereignty is the other one, which it can also be related to migration, obviously. And the third one, which Ilke mentioned as well, is the Green Deal. And someone call it green madness, then green lash, something like this. Truth is that radical right parties have managed to go transnational on topics that, in theory, mainstream parties could have been better at. And there's a contradiction here. How are we going to discuss, or how are we going to Europeanize elections if voters care about national issues, but then the radical right parties are the ones capitalizing on transnational issues and on bubble topics, let's say. So that's a contradiction that we seem that we cannot escape.
And suddenly the Green Deal, I mean, 5 years ago, we were all crazy for climate transaction, and now the Green Deal has been a very polarized and polarizing element.
And another issue that does not make sense is that if you look at the Eurobarometer and the priorities of the voters on topics like social inequality, the Green Deal, and you look at how, what the poll said, it doesn't make sense. I mean, the voters are going to vote for parties that are contrary to these issues in theory, at least.
Ilka.
Yeah, I think the discussion about the parties that are more towards the right of the EPP, it's like, because we have political groups and then we have non-aligned. I think that the most interesting thing that we will be following on Sunday is the voting shares of these parties, but also the groupings that might come and their real impact on the European Parliament's day-to-day life. But if we go back to this idea of negative Euro branding and that using these issues like migration, green transition, security in some cases, it's like in the countries close to Russia and the countries that are not necessarily close to Russia, and the issues related to national sovereignty and economics, we are seeing definitely an instrumentalization. But when we talk about voting, I really want to underline something, that if there's a discontent, then there's a discontent at the national level and also at the European level. It's like if a citizen thinks that they are living worse than their parents and they have no hope for the future, then this is a reality. And the extreme right parties are, or their campaigns or their issue spaces are just going to be an amplifier of this reality. If they are some kind of losers of globalization and they are worried about the national sovereignty dimension, it's the same. Or there are people that their skills, they don't move and they are not necessarily looking for a job opportunity in Brussels, then some technocrats living there, of course it will rise the possibility of, they will rise a vote towards your skepticism. And as we have said in the beginning, your skepticism is not about leaving Europe anymore, but it's changing from within. And that goes very much hand in hand with this increasingly voiced desire for national sovereignty. So for me, the key for the mainstream political parties is that they should look for real solutions to the problems that the citizens have, because they are real. This is not that they are instrumentalized, created by right extreme parties. And then also explain to the citizens that how, for example, in case of the fight against climate change, it's such a big issue. There are wildfires, droughts, or over rain territories in the Central and Northern Europe, everywhere. They should just explain this to the citizens, that this is crucial, we need to fight against this, and this is a national and European issue at the same time.
I don't want to defend political parties. I see them in great responsibility to, increase the transnational character, let's say, of these elections. But I mean, what we have to keep in mind is, of course, that it's more difficult for national parties to make electoral promises like national parties do for national elections, right? The parliament doesn't have a right of initiative. So this means it cannot promise something because it cannot propose something later either. And on top of that, these are party families, right? And even if, I don't know, the socialist promise, the German socialists promise minimum wage, that doesn't mean necessarily that their social counterparts from other member states go along. So I think, again, there is a structural issue also in this. And if you want to step in, do so. Otherwise, I'm going to look into the audience. If anybody, yeah, very quick hand over there. Can we get a microphone? Do we have a colleague here who can lend a microphone? Perfect. Thanks so much. Where was it? The lady in the back. Yes. Save your voice. Yes, save your voice. Yes. Please introduce yourself.
I was intrigued by the discussion about how do we Europeanize, and you'll see I have a very British accent, so I've learned the hard way. And what comes with not explaining Europe and the importance of Europe. My one question about Europeanizing to sort of citizens at a national level, how important Europe is and why it matters for their lives. Do you not think that there's a danger with that narrative that actually we end up playing into the hands of the more Eurosceptic parties by saying Europe takes up too much place actually in your lives? So we sort of feed the sovereigntist discussion and narrative by saying, look how important Europe is, look how many decisions it makes that affect your life. Do we then, as I said, does that just naturally lead to us reaffirming accidentally maybe what the far right is trying to push?
You're getting very nervous next to me here, so.
Yes, because why not? What's bad about that? If it finally drives those ones who are making the decisions out of their chairs into actually arguing and justifying why such decisions are necessary, instead of basically, yes, of course, if you don't react to that, then it becomes a sovereignist issue. If you explain, like you said before, if you try to explain why it is necessary, why we benefit from that, maybe not directly, but indirectly, etc., why there is a joint responsibility. If this discussion, this Europeanization, that's a complicated word, is necessary and a good thing, but this is a discussion, yes, that needs to be had. So as long as we are worried about this discussion, the ones who are driving in the direction of sovereignty, identity, renationalization will win the debate, because there is no debate.
Does it resonate with you too?
Yeah, I mean, that's a political decision to be made as well. I mean, politicizing the European Union has the negative side effect that will give room and the floor to these kind of parties, but will also enable the rest of the parties to make their own vision or to promote their own vision of Europe. And that's the play the play field that you wanna play in, actually.
Yeah, I personally am very pro-politicizing, pro-Europeanizing discussions for one simple reason. The citizens need to know why something is being decided and happening. For example, in the case of COVID-19, it was easier to connect. You know, it's like there's a European Commission, they negotiated vaccines for all of us. Thanks to that, we have all vaccines, and so hopefully we are not going to die with this virus. But in the case of, for example, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it really is very hard for a country like Spain or Portugal, super far away from Russia and the historical Russian threats, to understand why the European Union is going to support this war. So if the mainstream parties are not necessarily communicating on the importance of European response to this, why this is important for the overall European security, and as such, the citizens won't necessarily understand or follow up the debate, then it's going to be the Eurosceptic parties saying that your taxpayer money is used for supporting a country that is barely a candidate, I'm exaggerating here, and hosting the Ukrainians at home. So it cannot just be the political space. You know, it's just like the significantly important European issues cannot just be used by negative Europe branding. It cannot be, because otherwise Brexit is a very specific case. United Kingdom is a very specific country. But in pro-European countries, even in pro-European countries, citizens need to understand why some issues are essential and why they should be better responded at the European level than the national level.
Any other question? Yes. We have to steal one microphone again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So my name is Andre. I'm working for the Hessian representation here in Brussels. And interestingly enough, those countries who have seen the biggest surge in interest in the European elections are those who have parties that made Euroscepticism somewhat socially acceptable. So what I'm saying is, when in 2019 Eurosceptics saw the main way of expressing their will by not voting, in 2024 we see parties, especially of Giorgia Meloni and Rassemblement National, who somewhat made it socially acceptable to introduce Euroscepticism to the European Parliament. So this is a two-part question, so bear with me. First of all, do you share this impression, especially with regards to Spain? And second of all, do you see this as beneficial for European democracy, so to speak? Thank you.
Yeah, the thing is, there's no way around it. I mean, this political option is already here. So if it's ignored as it used to be, it's going to take the place. So the mainstream political parties who are not Eurosceptic or who have a different vision on Europe than those parties need to step in and need to have these discussions. And this is true for Spain, although in Spain, Vox is not as Eurosceptic as in other parts of other similar parties in the rest of Europe, because Spanish population is very pro-European. But for the rest of countries, I think the solution is one of the options is to step in this debate.
More questions?
No, but I think it is a very very important issue that we raise, especially when we look into what happens in Italy, right? I mean, where we have a leader, Meloni, who has moderated on the European level so much that she's become a very acceptable partner, needed partner almost, right? So needed that, you know, Ursula von der Leyen, you saw the lead candidate debate, right, where she had to admit that, you know, in order to not lose her as a credible partner on EU level, she has to turn a blind eye on what she does on national level, right? So basically, the message is, dear leaders in the European Council, whatever you do, if you behave in the European Council, you're fine. You know, like we're not going to check too much what you do on national level, and that is an issue, right? So it's kind of it's a moderation, but only on the EU level, not on the national level. Any more questions? Yes. So 2 more questions here. We're going to take them together because then we have to move on slowly. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jared Rexealer. I'm at the Diplomatic Mission of Canada to the EU. I wanted to get back to this question about the information landscape, because I think there's been some really good points. My own sense is that the European citizens more and more do appreciate the European Union has an impact on its lives. I think where they're still a bit perplexed is how that vote translates into reality, impact into the system. And so a lot of it, there's many, people talk about the responsibility of national governments to better communicate these things. But I watched the French debates last night, and I was frankly aghast at how poor it was in terms of the quality, the mistruths, the half-truths, outright lies, not only from the extreme fringes, but even from more mainstream actors as well. But maybe, I think that's part of the problem. It's not even disinformation. Sometimes it's misinformation. People are not even aware themselves, politicians, of how the system works. But I think one thing we're really hearing more and more about is the impact of disinformation, foreign interference from others outside of the European Union. I'd be just interested in what you're seeing at member state level, because I get a better sense here in Brussels, but I don't quite see the differentiation necessarily between Spain and Austria and others countries that you worked on in your country chapters. So anything you could say about the potential impact or what they're seeing would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. If we could pass on the microphone to...
Thank you. So my name is Reka. I deal with youth engagement. And I like to start by asking, did you know that there are as many MEPs called Martin as those under 30 in the European Parliament? We have 6 MEPs who are called Martin and 6 under 30 MEPs out of the 705. The youth population in the EU is 17. So we can say that the young people are heavily underrepresented in the European Parliament. So maybe it's not surprising that they tend to be dissatisfied with the traditional structures. And yet we do know that young people trust the EU. Sometimes they trust it even more than their own government. But I'm very afraid that half of the first-time voters are on TikTok. And we know that the far right is very popular on the TikTok. Identity and Democracy has 1 million followers, outreach. And I'm very afraid that now in 4 countries, for example, 16 years old can vote, which is amazing because of political socialization. But do you feel that the European Parliament in particular is doing enough to communicate with young people, to reach out to young people? And how can we do better to give power and representation to these young people? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think the young people question goes to you, no? And you too, which one? Feel free to pick and choose.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think that what should the European Parliament do, I will leave that to you directly. But I actually want to go back a bit on this discussion about the citizens' understanding and feeling of the responsibility of the European Union in important issues, how the extreme right wing or far right is playing on these issues, and how they are making this acceptable or not. As I said, I'm not going to comment on that, but I'm intrigued. I think the issue here is that I personally believe very much on the role of the role played by the mainstream. It's like the center left and center right, the Grand Coalition and the amplified Grand Coalition with the Liberals and the Greens. It was at the core of this understanding of European integration. And it's not just about being pro-European. It's not just being pro-European. It's also the concept of progress for all European citizens. So it's the discussions that would lead to an overall progress in general citizens' lives. And what I'm more afraid for 2024 elections is that not only we are normalizing more far-right discourse, we're also kind of accepting it's not just the European Parliament elections, it's also the EU strategic agenda. I have a recent piece out connecting the two, because both we are normalizing far right in the European Parliament and the discourse at the European level and the national level, and at the same time securitizing the conversation at the EU strategic agenda. The new strategic agenda do not necessarily have explicit references to the Green Deal and social issues. I hope they are going to change this. We are throwing balls at them. It's like, but this is really important. This 2024 election could be an election that we are kind of changing the the DNA of the project, the idea of integration. And that is, it's not about being pro or anti. It's about what kind of policies and solutions are provided to citizens. Citizens, putting citizens at the center.
Victor, would you like to chip in?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm throwing rocks at my roof because I said that Spain is a pro-European country, but pro-Europeanism is increasingly becoming an empty word. I mean, since nobody is defending to get out of the European Union, more or less in general. I mean, there are parties, but most of them don't. Then it's about what kind of Europe are we projecting. So that's the main discussion that it should happen from these elections onwards.
I think, by the way, the Finnish are the only ones, at least this was a result of our analysis, no? That the Finnish are the only ones that kind of still flirt with an exit. And in the AfD, they have it in their manifesto, but it's more like either we do a referendum or we have to change the EU from within or something, so the language is also very soft. But all the other far-right parties, I mean, Brexit is considered a disaster, and nobody wants to burn their fingers with any kind of Dexit, Frexit, Gexit, whatever we had, right? The youth.
So yeah, why are you looking at me when you're asking? Yes, but
Did he give you a good answer then?
Well, my question was 1.5 years ago. How are you going to support the ground gamers together with the volunteers on the ground, talking to their peers, getting people to vote?
So I think we're doing hopefully quite well with that one. On the number of, and now you can take it, number of women elected to the European Parliament, number of young MEPs elected to the European Parliament, number of members of persons of color elected to the European Parliament, number of members coming from socially lower background. All that is horribly low. Is this the fault of the European Parliament institution and administration? No. Must this question be directed at, in every country, every single party that is fielding their candidates for this election? Yes. Are there some who are doing this? Yes, thank God there are. We will see, but what will we have? A 55-60% turnover at this election. I really hope to have a larger number, larger proportion of at least younger MEPs to a certain degree. But that is the point. As much as we want to have European elections, this is the whole problem that we are always having also with the Spitzenkandidaten, with the lead candidate. It's, Jesus, there are journalists present, but still, that's a sham exercise at the end of the day, yeah? Because you can't vote for them. Let's leave that aside, but for the time being. But it is 27 national elections, and we need to bring this issue, who comes to Brussels, who is sent to Brussels, and this ties very much in with your viewing of the French debate yesterday. As long as parties do not consider it important, the quality of the candidates they're going to send to Brussels, including their gender, their age, their background, etc., to really work on inclusion, on the variety of representing the width of society, as long as the long we are going to have that problem. Now, when it comes to youth, it's one of the most interesting debates that I'm having with my people in my team, because of course there is the youth unit who is saying youth has to be a target group. In purely number games, I would say it's not necessarily a target group, but maybe this would be the one target group the European Parliament could effectively reach out to over a longer period of time, not only during the elections. Maybe that would make sense. It's a discussion that needs to be had. Yeah.
And that is the perfect bridge to our last little segment. We have 12 minutes left. And as you all see, I did this only for Philip, of course, right? So tell us a little bit. Now, you said basically what the European Parliament cannot do because it's a responsibility of the national political parties. But tell us, what can the European Parliament then do? What are you doing? You're the director of campaigns. So what was the rationale and is it working?
Okay. I truly believe it's working. When we start with Use Your Vote, I really trust that everyone in the room has already seen at least once the Use Your Vote, the Use Your Vote video that we have published 4 weeks ago. I actually would trust that everyone has seen it because the latest figures that I got yesterday is that we have in total 500 million views on that one. Wow. 360 million views completed on the 4-minute video. So this is absolutely amazing figure. Still, purely mathematically, it means that we have once, twice, 1 or 2 touch points with every voter of the 370 million who can vote. So that in itself makes really clear that the European Parliament can and will always only have a support, may I say it, secondary role in European election campaigns. We contribute to it, and I think we're doing this quite well, but the reason why I believe that we are doing it quite well is because you're wearing that button. And you haven't been paid by me to pay this button, or I have even no idea where you got the button from, but you're wearing it. What I want to say is the campaign of the European Parliament from the very outset has been designed in finding partners, allies, organizations, associations, individuals, when we come to together.eu, who share the message on their own time, on their own terms, on their own topic, talk about the elections, talk about democracy, talk about using your vote. And this is working in a way that we have never ever seen this beforehand. I have more than 400 pan-European and national organizations from the left to the right, from every societal angle, joining with their own topics in the campaign. I have more than 50 multinational companies who are doing their own thing, whether it's the huge murals that Oatly has been putting out and that you see at the Gare du Midi, whether it's Lime, who is offering 2 times 30 minutes free rides to the polling stations across Europe on election day. This is stuff they're all doing on their own because there is this growing social understanding that these elections matter. So from that point of view, I would say our campaign so far has been successful in creating awareness, creating a conversation that is larger than just me as an institution talking to a few. And from that point of view, so far, I'm happy.
And you focus on a very simple message, right? Use your vote and the date.
Because I can't do anything else. I can't, as an institution, as an administration, institutional campaign, I cannot go and say this decision on the renaturation law was absolute crap, or it was extremely intelligent, it was too much, it was too little, it was good, it was bad. Not my thing. This is what the political side is doing. And by the way, have we ever seen such an early politicization also of the European debate like this time around? Started in autumn of last year with the EPP kicking up the renaturation debate, and this is in many countries today also quite an issue, Austria, for example. So it works at the end of the day, but we can do 2 things. Go to vote, date, awareness of the elections, and a generalized topic, which this time around is democracy.
It's quite difficult, generally speaking, for EU actors to reach down to national level, right? What do you think? I mean, is this something? Is it only Brussels bubble creatures like me that run around with the pins, or is it, or does it also reach ordinary citizens? Love that word.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, I think just one point. I love the campaign. Congratulations. I think it has been the most effective ever. For me, the next time, what could be added to these simple messages and simple thing is that focusing a bit more on the role of the European Parliament. No, it's like, because we have done this and that we have invented Spitzenkandidaten. It's not necessarily working. But do you know what could be also as simple as such? The European Parliament auditions and votes on College of Commissioners. This is the moment where they will have the most important impact on the policy agenda, and they will negotiate. They have done this. The Socialists and Democrats in the last election put the Green agenda super powerfully because they negotiated it. Maybe that the next time, what would be really good is that to include a bit the meaning of the European Parliament in the European ecosystem. I know it sounds more complex, and use your vote is a simpler and more effective message, and it's going to be the center anyway. But I think we really need that the citizens, ordinary citizens or citizens at the national level, to know why it matters to vote in the European Parliament. This is the only medium to long-term solution to guarantee that they will keep on voting.
But you need national media for this, national parties, national governments, right? No scapegoating, difficult. So, is there, would you like to step in again? Yeah, please.
On the top, sorry, question first.
One more question just there.
Was it directly to what Ilke said, Philip?
Kind of.
Then I would prefer you saying this first,
Okay.
and then we can move to your question.
The impact of the European elections on the top jobs also is in the public debate, and I think it transcends the bubble debate already quite a lot. Is in the public debate more than it ever has been before. Everyone is counting whether she will have more than 9 votes or whether she is on minus 30 right now, whether she needs to go to Meloni or whether she needs to open up to the Greens. And I don't think I need in this context to say who she is, but this is out there. I don't even necessarily believe that the European Parliament has to or would have had to include this right now in this ongoing debate. But of course, explaining more and more what the European Parliament is doing has to be more part of our communication efforts, but across the whole period.
Also, other members of the college, right? I mean, we see so many debate on national level already about future commissioners. Like, since when is this such a popular job?
And it is true that in our report it showcases this. Most of the discussions on the campaign is about who is going to be sent, as you said before, who is going to be sent to Brussels and in what conditions.
And from that point, I truly believe that what we are going to see in autumn, whether it starts in September or October, and whether we finish in November or December with the Commission hearings and everything, this will be a highly politicized, but also highly content-driven debate that will have a lot of publicity and public awareness to it.
This would be almost beautiful final words, but we're not there yet.
No.
Please, the microphone.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce a few people, but if right now I'm a student at Georgia Tech, and people who are sitting around me, we're on a study abroad program to learn about the European Union, NATO, and we're specifically focusing on the rise of the far right. But with all that being said, I did want to ask, we all watched the Use Your Vote video that you discussed, and I'm trying to bridge the discussion that we previously had with what we're talking about now. Is the campaign to try and call out the far right and point out that you can use your vote to uplift democracy in a way, has that distracted the more mainstream parties from connecting their program to the bread and butter issues that people care about, that the far right is sort of dominating at the moment?
Good question. Difficult to answer.
Yeah.
Who dares?
Well, I can dare, just for the sake of trying. I personally really care about this bread and butter issues and how they are important for the citizens and how they are not necessarily responded, nor at a national level and even less in the European level. And this is a problem, I think. But I think that your question also secretly connects to this, the European integration being an elite issue or more of an elite issue rather than an ordinary issue for citizens, which the more politicized the European integration, the more explained Europe's role in policymaking and connection to citizens' lives, the better the situation will become. This is why, for example, I care very much about the green transition as the issue space. It is very much instrumentalized by the far right, but the mainstream parties have the responsibility to use that because it is going to every citizen's life. It is 40 degrees in March in southern Spain. It's every single citizen feeling, and the disadvantaged economic groups feeling even more because they don't have air conditioning or have money to pay the electricity bill. So the more mainstream parties change the thinking and campaign on this daily life repercussions of issue spaces that we care about, technological transition the same. It is very bad for disadvantaged group. Green transition the same. The better the space it will become. It's not just like Europe is great, we should be pro-European. Yeah. It is that these issues are truly transnational and we need European solutions.
Right. We've reached the final round.
I'm done
Singular.
with my final round.
Yeah, you're done now. Hector.
No, I agree with what Ilke said, but it's not only about campaigning, then it's delivering, which has been the main problem of the mainstream political parties, because I think the diagnosis that radical right parties do are correct in several things. No, there's a problem with living prices, but then how do you address it? Is the European Union capable of addressing this? That's a question that we may pose to the political leaders, and then if they are able to address it, then we may have more European Union in the future. If not, we'll see.
Last words to Philip.
73% in the last Eurobarometer says the action of the European Union have an impact on my life. The question is not qualified. It doesn't ask whether this is felt as a good impact or a bad impact. And that's the point. I want those ones who are asked, will you go to vote? And they say, I haven't thought about it, possibly, maybe. I want them to go and use their vote. I think this is what our campaign mostly wants to say. This is very much about democracy. This is not only regional, local, and national democracy. This is also European democracy. This is where we need to stand up, because otherwise, and now I'm really getting into full campaign mode, otherwise others will take the decision for you. And what I don't want is then all the sad faces on Sunday evening standing there and saying, they have grown in power and they have increased, and how could we have known, and so sad, and da-da-da. No, use your vote. Thank you.
Perfect final words. What else can I say? Use your vote indeed. And thanks a lot to our panel for being here with us and discussing. Thanks for coming to the SEPS, and thanks for your questions. We have one more event in our EP election series, although I have to say this is only for members, next week. But there's so much interesting institutional stuff happening also after the elections that we partly also touched upon today. So we will have many more of those debates in this year, in this room. Goodbye. Ein Foto noch.